pero muchas gracias y les doy la bienvenida a esta presentación que vamos a tener sobre la visita virtual a la planta de etanol. Vamos a tener en la planta al señor Jeff Painter, que después de presentar el video, él va a poder contestar las preguntas y respuestas, y darle respuestas a sus preguntas, perdón. Y después estaremos presentando un recorrido sobre la situación de la planta y vamos a visitar la granja de la familia Hodgen, que aquí nos acompañan. Ellos, además de ser agricultores, son ganaderos y tienen doctorados en nutrición de ganado, entonces nos van a poder dar muchas respuestas a las preguntas que vayamos teniendo. Y también nos acompaña el señor David Ring. Es un gusto, él ya ha venido a México, ha visitado los mercados. Y él tiene, aparte de ser agricultor en el estado de Indiana, tiene vacas lecheras y produce pavos. Entonces, no sé si ya le puedo ir dando para adelante al video. Nos acompaña Helena Yete. Espero que haya pronunciado bien tu apellido. Y ella es la directora de biocombustible en el estado de Indiana. Y nos va a presentar un breve video sobre lo que está haciendo Indiana. No sé si quieren ir adelante con eso.
Okay, Javier, we have him, we sent him another link and
okay.
he will be joining us shortly.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead with the video then, with Helena's videos.
Yeah, Robin, the welcome video, please. Javier, you should be able to see Jeff now in the waiting area.
Hola, mi nombre es Elena Jetty. I am the Biosales Director for Indiana Corn Marketing Council. Welcome to our first virtual international Mexico tour. We roll to our statewide organization that serves Indiana corn farmers through programs is to help create demand and broaden markets, opening opportunities down the road and across the globe for Indiana corn farmers. What's the benefit? ICMC works to promote new and expanding market opportunities by educating Indiana drivers about ethanol choices at the pump, promoting E15 and E85 usage, and investing in research to understand the benefits of ethanol to our state. Collaborating with the U.S. Grains Council in similar efforts helps provide information on domestic and export opportunities. I know that many efforts are striving to get Mexico to use E10, and today is providing information and peace of mind around the ethanol that comes from our corn farmers. The United States has approval to blend 15% into every gallon of fuel. A large component to my role here in Indiana is working with our ethanol plants and fuel retail stations to help assist infrastructure to offer unleaded 88, also known as E15. American farmers, workers, and businesses stand to benefit greatly from great collaboration and market access. For agriculture, International trade is critical to reaching the 95% of the world's consumers living outside the United States. In closing, I'm glad to have you all here, and although we have greatly enjoyed you visiting here in person, we have made great efforts to give you ethanol information in a virtual format. Gracias por visitarnos hoy y nos vemos pronto. Adiós.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Painter with Cardinal Ethanol. I am the CEO and president here. This plant was built in 2008. It's been operating ever since. We operate as a 130 million gallon a year plant. We produce roughly 300,000 tons of distiller's grain. We also produce distiller's corn oil and CO2 for the use in dry ice and meat packaging. Annually, Cardinal uses about 45 million bushel of corn to produce the products that we make here at Cardinal. So the plant operates with 58 full-time people. Cardinal originates all of their grain here with 4 merchandisers and 1 commodity manager, taking care of all the needs of the plant. Of the 45 million bushel of grain that we use every year, about 70% of it is locally sourced from our local producers, and 30% comes from commercial outlets. We believe ethanol has a long-term future, and through our practices here at Cardinal Ethanol in improved technology, efficiencies in our plant, and through the practices that we use to maintain our environment, we believe that ethanol is here to stay. We know that ethanol burns cleaner, is more efficient in today's automobiles, and we believe that ethanol will be and continue to be a fuel of the future. Most of our ethanol is shipped to the East Coast. We do have truck destinations that are regional, places like Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, Indianapolis, but the primary destination for our ethanol is East Coast, where the major population centers are. Because of the size of the plant, most of our alcohol and DDGs gets shipped by train. DDGs into the southeast, poultry and hogs down in the southeast, and into the East Coast markets in Norfolk, where it can be loaded into containers or loaded onto barges or ships and sent overseas to places like Asia, the Philippines, and other destinations. I think with ethanol's positive carbon value, I think that it'll always be a good oxygenant for the fuels that we're using today. Ethanol has a good carbon score, and through technologies and new chemicals, new research and new ideas that people are having with sequestering carbon and things like that, ethanol will be around for some time. Obviously, the last few months have been kind of hectic and kind of a challenge for everyone. Early on, the plant decided to continue to operate at the maximum capacity as long as there was demand for the ethanol. Once we got deep into the COVID issue, demand stopped, people quit driving, they stayed at home, and so our demand for our product also dropped at that time. So we were able to cut back on production, maintain our staff, keep producing at about a 70% rate until things started to open up, people started driving, and summertime rolled around. I want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about Cardinal Ethanol. Hopefully sometime in the future we'll be able to chat live and in person. But until then, I wish you a great afternoon. If you're ever in the United States and get a chance to drop by, we'd love to host you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Ahorita con nosotros tenemos al señor Jeff, Jeff Painter, quien fue quien dio la presentación. Entonces, lo tenemos disponible para que nos platique sobre cualquier duda que tengan respecto a la planta de etanol. Entonces pueden poner sus preguntas en la parte de preguntas y respuestas o levantar la mano y nos podemos ir contestando. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta o algún comentario para Jeff? Igual,
Your name
Jeff.
was translated, right, Robin?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Hola, Jeff. Creo que I think that you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Jeff, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, this is Jeff, CEO and President of Aspen.
Javier, are there any questions from the team for Jeff?
Currently, we don't have any questions for Jeff yet. ¿Alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta con respecto a lo que vieron con la planta de etanol? Tengo una, Fernando Livas. Fernando, te voy a dar la oportunidad para que hables al micrófono.
Hey, Javier, I think you're muted now. You muted yourself.
Ya. O la puedes escribir en la parte de preguntas y respuestas porque necesitas quitarte el modo de mute para que te podamos escuchar, Fernando. Ok. Bueno, pues no lo podemos escuchar a Fernando. ¿Alguien más quiere hacer alguna pregunta? ¿Tiene algún comentario? Pues aparentemente, no tenemos ninguna pregunta. Eduardo, Rubén, ¿tienen alguna pregunta que quieran hacer, algún comentario?
A ver, sí tengo voz.
Yes.
Te escuchamos, Rubén.
Sí, las perspectivas que se tienen a mediano plazo con la producción de etanol en relación con los precios de los combustibles fósiles. ¿Cuál sería la perspectiva para la próxima década, por ejemplo?
Excelente pregunta. Jeff, ¿nos puedes hacer el favor de contestar?
Jeff, did you hear their question?
No, it was broken. Coming through broken. I couldn't hear it.
Okay, they would like for you to talk about the future outlook of fossil fuels and ethanol within 5 to 10 years.
I have an opinion on that, but can they hear me or what are we doing?
Yes, they can hear you.
Okay, so obviously ethanol is commodity, and we're using it today as an oxygenate, and it is one of the highest rated oxygenates out there, and for the cheapest price, it will continue to be a good oxygenate source to help reduce carbon and help reduce emissions. So I believe that we'll continue to see ethanol a viable fuel additive into the future.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Are there any additional questions?
Yes, we have an additional question. There's a person, Angel Rosendo Pulido, he's curious about the cost of production of ethanol. What is the cost of production of on ethanol?
Jeff, we would like to hear what the cost of production on ethanol is.
I think it's one of those things that's kind of a universal number, probably around 30 to 32 cents a gallon break even.
Maybe Jeff, if you could further explain, maybe more on how that price settled. What settles that price?
I'm sorry, Robin, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, what settles the price?
As obviously the price determined off of an index, either New York Harbor Index, Chicago Board of Trade Index, and so our price is based off of that minus an index and a freight from that point.
Thank you, Jeff. Javier, was that clear?
I think it was. Jeff, another participant wants to know what percentage of what you manufacture of DDGs stays in the United States, and what percentage goes abroad?
Jeff, what percentage of DDGs manufactured stays in the U.S. versus traveling abroad?
As far as nationwide, I guess I'm really not quite sure. I would say it's probably close to 60-40, around 60% exported, 40% stays in the United States for feed.
Okay. We have another question from the audience. This will be Arturo Facio from Veracruz. He wants to know, has the ethanol international demand been affected by COVID? And how low would you estimate prices will vary at this end of this year? Ethanol, I guess.
Hey, Jeff. How has COVID impacted the operation and the prices internationally?
Ran into is the same that everybody's ran into globally. When the pandemic hit in different parts of the world, obviously people stayed home. They weren't traveling. Gasoline usage was down, so when gasoline usage slowed, the demand for ethanol also slowed. So everybody was impacted on our end, just from the lack of demand for motor fuels.
Thank you very much, Jeff. ¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta que quiera hacer a Jeff como comentario de la visita de la planta de etanol? Ok, pues supongo que eso sería todo. Jeff, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros y por darnos tu tiempo. Entendemos que tenías una urgencia que tenías que atender, pero agradecemos que nos hayas visitado y agradecemos también el video que nos hiciste el favor de presentarnos.
Welcome to the mostly comprehensive online video tour of your local POET plant. Hard hats are not mandatory on the Mostly Comprehensive Tour, but they do look pretty good, so maybe you want to put one on. It's up to you. The process begins with local producers, who sell us literally tons of their field corn. Not the kind we'd eat, though. Each truckload helps displace 66 barrels of imported oil. We send all the corn through a hammer mill, which grinds it into a fine powder called flour. Next, we mix the flour with water, special enzymes, and yeast to make a mash and then ferment it. That fermented mash is called beer. Not the drinkable kind, though, sorry. The liquids are distilled, processed, and dehydrated into alcohol, also ethanol. 200 proof and 100% homegrown and renewable. Ethanol's high octane rating of 113 increases horsepower. It combusts at a lower temperature, which helps engines stay cooler. And it fuels everything from race cars to monster trucks to trick airplanes. The stuff is so American you might as well be filling your tank with baseball or hot dish or apple pie. But back to the tour. The oil is extracted from what's left, and the protein and nutrients are condensed and dried to produce a high-protein animal feed and renewable, there's that word again, industrial products. In addition to 3 gallons of ethanol, every bushel of corn yields 18 pounds of distiller's grain. So we fuel cars and we help feed a lot of animals, which feeds a lot of people. So by the time our tour ends, at the fuel pump or the feed lot, there's pretty much nothing left to waste, which is pretty much the way we like it. And this concludes our Mostly Comprehensive Tour. Thanks for stopping by.
Hi, welcome to Hodgen Farms here in Roachdale, Indiana. I'm Paul Hodgen.
And I'm Jenny Hodgen. And my name's Hodgen. And we're excited to show you around our place.
This ground was actually purchased in 1972 by my grandparents, Bob and Marjorie Hodgen. And then my father graduated from Purdue in 73, and we've been farming here along the Big Raccoon Creek watershed since then. I actually grew up on this property, and then recently returned full-time to the farm in 2012. I ended up getting my PhD, then working in industry, and came back to the farm in 2012. As you can also see in the background is 2 of our major crops that we grow, corn and soybeans. Right now at this time of the year, we've already harvested the wheat and we haven't planted it yet. But one of the other major crops that we grow here, because we are a diversified grain and livestock operation, is grass in our pastures. So it is prudent for us to be standing in a pasture, talk about this, because we have significant acres in grass production for feedstuff for our cattle. Our corn actually, a lot of it goes into 2 ethanol plants that are 30 miles from our farm in either direction, north or south. From the ethanol production, there's a byproduct called dry distillers grains, DDG, which we actually purchase and bring back to the farm and actually help feed our cattle with it. So we have a full cycle of the crop from farm to end user back to the farm. On the soybean side, we actually are grown for 3 markets. We have regular non-GMO soybeans that are going to Lafayette to be crushed, and then that soybean meal is being sent to the southeast in Georgia to be fed to the chickens. These will actually be in tofu, and our job, we have to keep track of the bean, the seed from the time it shows up to the farm, and keep this separate from any other soybeans that we raise, clear through till the truck leaves the farm for the final market. So we have to pay attention to grain quality and data management for these beans all the way through, so our customer gets exactly what they're wanting.
So you see the cows behind us. I actually grew up on a large ranch out in the southwest U.S. in New Mexico, where my brothers still run our family ranch out there, and I even still have cows out there. Besides just raising cattle and having the history of raising cattle, I'm a meat scientist too, because I like to eat the products that come from them. So I do have my PhD in meat science. Some of the things that I've done throughout my career as a meat scientist have involved a lot of answering questions for our international community. And so I sit on the U.S. Meat Export Federation Board to try to answer questions that you guys might have about how we're raising our animals.
So just like all the producers in the United States, we too care about the health and well-being of our animals. There are several things that we do to ensure that these animals are growing well and that they are producing tasty meat for you. One of the most important things that we do is make sure all of our employees practice good handling practices, and so one of the ways we can ensure that is by having them go through regular beef quality assurance trainings. So some of the other things that we do to ensure the well-being of our animals is we work closely with our veterinarian and nutritionists. So by making sure that they get vaccinations at the right time and that they are getting the right nutrients at the right time of the year for the right stage of growth, just ensures that you're getting an awesome piece of meat. At the same time, these animals are as healthy and happy as they can be. So you can see we're in a pasture and there's still lots of grass growing. So because we live in an environment here in Indiana that gets lots of rain, we can practice rotational grazing. So we have smaller pastures than, say, what we would have out where I grew up. And we just move the cattle from pasture to pasture as the grass gets to a certain height. This ensures that we have grass year-round for the animals, so it reduces some of our costs. But even more importantly, it makes sure that there is still grass growing to sequester carbon, to keep our airs and water cleaner.
I'd like to take the time now and talk to you about some of the conservation practices that we employ on our farm. I'm sitting next to one of our soybean fields that is right next to Big Raccoon Creek. Our farm has a lot of surface water, tributaries flowing through it. So one of the conservation practices we employ is called a filter strip. And that is the grass buffer here you're seeing between our crop and the surface flow of Big Raccoon Creek here. The job of the filter strip is just as it says. It will filter out any sediment, and in that sediment will be in the nutrients captured here in the grass and filtered out before it enters into Big Raccoon Creek. Surface water quality is very important to our farm because Big Raccoon Creek feeds into one of the largest recreational lakes in the state 5 miles downstream for us. So it's very important for us to do our part to make sure the water is clean for everyone to enjoy downstream. So here we are the 12th day of August here, standing in one of our cornfields that we planted first. And the corn is starting to dent now, so it won't be long before we're harvesting this field here. And this is one of the fields that is a dual purpose field for us. So we're going to raise this corn and we're going to fly on a cover crop here next week. An airplane will actually come in and broadcast wheat, turnip, and radish over the top of this crop. And it's just going to land on the soil and germinate. So our goal for this field right now is not only to produce a corn crop, but it's also going to help produce beef off this farm. So one of the funnest technologies that we actually talk about here on the farm that we use is, in the precision ag world, is actual variable rate seeding. So as the planter was coming across the field here, it had a map loaded into the monitor, and the GPS was telling the tractor where it was located on that map. And that map had the rate of seed to drop for this specific spot in the field. So what we've done is through capturing yield data and understanding the productivity of our ground in various places, we can actually change and maximize the yield potential of each part of the ground that is different in soil type or slope or topography. Anything that will affect the yield, we will change how we manage that piece of the ground. And we can do it right down to within a foot. Roughly in the same field, we're less than a football distance from where we started. But one of the things I want you to see in the background of this is how much taller the crop is, how much darker green it is, how much more of what we call leaf area here. And what I mean by leaf area is the actual amount of leaf surface area is in the canopy here behind me. And you should be able to see in this video here how much closer these ears are. So where we were in the previous spot was only about 26,000 plants per acre. And we're closer to about 38 to 39,000 plants here in a square acre. So this ground here, this is actually a little bit lower here. There's a lot more water holding capacity in the soil that we're standing on. It's a lot more productive. So we're able to raise and put more plants here, which in turn increases the yield and maximizes the profitability and the yield from this part of the field versus up on top of the slope here where there's a little bit more sand, less organic matter, less water holding capacity. From the crop side, I really see us as consumer preferences continue to change and they want a very specific product. I really see us on the farm doing more identity preserved crops and actually raising a crop for a specific end user.
So I also feel that the future of animal agriculture looks pretty good in the next 10 years. I think that it mirrors a lot what's happening on the crop side of things. So if you look at it from 3 different buckets, I think the first one that we know is changing and improving every day is the genetics of the animals. So as we fine tune what consumers are wanting and what specific traits you want in your meat, we're better able to make the right breeding decisions to get you the quality of meat that you're wanting. In addition to the meat quality, I think some of the other improvements we're going to see in breeding is just animal health traits as well. So animals that stay healthier for longer, have better longevity, better feet so that they can go to the bunk longer, stay in certain climates longer. I also think that we're going to continue to see increased interest in things like traceability and sustainability.
On behalf of Hodgen Farms, thank you for visiting.
We hope that you come visit us in person someday. Bye.
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 Muy bien, muchas gracias y a los Hodgens por haber hecho esta bonita presentación. Y bueno, les recuerdo a los que están aquí visitando que ambos tienen sus doctorados como escucharon, en nutrición animal, ¿verdad? Entonces, no sé si tengan algunas preguntas que quieran aprovechar para hacerlos, ya sea por el lado de la producción, por el lado del estado de cómo viene el cultivo de maíz, y por el lado del ganado. Y voy a checar y creo que tengo aquí unas preguntas, ¿verdad? Tenía una pregunta aquí acerca de... Wow, ya se me juntaron aquí. ¿Cuál es? Ok, aquí está. Estoy nada más sorteando. Alguien está preguntando de la audiencia, ¿cómo deciden qué es lo que van a sembrar? Por ejemplo, ahorita en la caída de la demanda de etanol, ¿eso va a tener influencia en ustedes, en lo que van a producir más adelante? ¿Cómo toman ustedes esa decisión, si cambian a maíz, si cambian a soya o a otro tipo de cultivos?
Okay, for us, we do listen to what the market is telling us to grow. Late this spring, right before planting, we did shift acres back to soybean production. So we actually raised more soybeans because it was more profitable for us to raise soybeans this year, right at the time of planting. For the most part, we do practice crop rotation, and we try to stay close to 50-50 corn and soybeans as much as possible. But if the market does swing one way or the other, we will grow more corn or more soybeans and switch some acres back and forth.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Alguien me está preguntando cuál es el rendimiento esperado que tienen ustedes o que tiene Indiana, y a lo mejor Paul o David Ring también nos pueden contestar. Y la segunda pregunta que están haciendo es ¿cuántas cosechas tienen ustedes al año?
Okay, we raise one crop per year. So our growing season We basically plant in April and harvest in September and October through November. Then we do raise winter wheat, so we'll plant that here in the fall and then harvest it in July or late June, early July. We can plant a soybean crop behind the wheat. So we can get 2 crops in, wheat and a soybean crop. As far as the yield this year, Indiana is setting on, for the most part, a decent crop. There are areas where it's not so good, and there's areas where it's really good. So, and the yield is going to be somewhere, as far as the state average, probably in the high 170s. I don't know if we'll be over 180 or not for the state average. It's been hot and dry this past week, and that is trimming some yield back.
Correcto, eso quiere decir entonces que están esperando más o menos como unas 11 toneladas por hectárea. ¿Qué tal usted, don? ¿Cómo again?
I will trust your math on that.
What about you, David? What are your expectations? What are you seeing on your part of the world? ¿Qué es lo que estás viendo en tu parte del mundo?
We are in the very southern part of Indiana, and we're very fortunate. We've had plentiful rains. We're probably looking, barring a hurricane that's stirring in the Gulf right now, if the winds stay down there and don't destroy our crop, we are probably going to have one of our better crops we've ever raised. We're a couple weeks away from harvest, like Paul, but it looks good.
That's good. That's outstanding.
Javier,
Yes, sir.
when you were asking them about their yield, was that in tons, metric tons per hectare?
That's correct. Eso es correcto. Toneladas, hectáreas por toneladas por hectárea.
So that 12 tons per hectare is right. Currently USDA has Indiana at 188 bushels per acre. Now, David Ring may think he has a crop like that, but as you heard from Paul, his is probably a little bit less than that in terms of where his optimism is, because David's had different weather this year.
Javier, you gave me a conversion table on one of our trips down there, and I was digging that thing up today. I couldn't find it. I was going to impress you with the conversion rate automatically when you asked me these questions.
You're muted, Javier.
Javier, you're on mute.
Sorry. Nada más para que conozcan entonces, en la página de internet del Consejo de Granos, hay un convertidor que puede hacer las conversiones de bushels por acre a toneladas por hectárea. Y también tenemos una aplicación que desarrollamos y que ahorita estamos incluso en un proceso de sacar ya una versión mejorada de esta app de conversación, y que es muy recomendada. Ok. Tengo otra pregunta, y esta es para los Hodgen y para David también. Alguien está preguntando si ustedes les dan DDGs a su ganado y qué nivel de inclusión tienen en su ganado.
David, you can go first.
Thanks, Paul. Dairy cows, probably 15 pounds a day. Turkeys, I'm really not sure. We have a mill that mixes that feed. I do know they use it for a protein supplement, but the number of turkeys that we raise, we consume a lot of distillers grains.
What about the Hodgens?
Yeah.
There you go.
So we do feed DDGs to our herd. We mainly use it to finish the cattle out. We actually mix it with fines from our grain facility. We have a cleaner that collects the fines and the bees wings, and we use that with DDGs at about 30% mix ration there. DDGs, the fines, and we produce some really tasty beef with it.
And I think nationwide, the range is 20 to 50%, depending on how close feed yards and other facilities are to ethanol plants. It is a little lower on the pork side of things. They can feed it at 10 to 15% and still not adversely affect meat quality and get good rate of gains on the pigs. However, this year was not a very good year for the pork industry to utilize DDT, so there were better value places for them to get their feedstuffs from.
Paul, are you getting modified, the wet DDGs, or are you getting dry?
Dry. So my inclusion's a dry DDG.
And that's a big difference, because a lot of the cattle feeders, particularly close to ethanol plants, they get a lot more moisture or water in that feed than they do than what Paul and what you're doing as well, David, with your turkeys.
We have the modified for the cattle and dried for the turkeys.
Sí, me debo imaginar que mientras que el ganado no hay problema de darlo en su forma húmeda, ya para aves debe ser debe ser importante que venga seco. Y también lo que comentaban los Hodgen, digo, es un producto que va variando y es un ingrediente de oportunidad, y se va modificando conforme se vaya cambiando el mercado. Alguien acá pregunta, y esto es para los Hodgen, ¿qué porcentajes de fertilidad tienen en su ganado al año con el ganado Angus que manejan?
So we always strive for 100%. It unfortunately never ends up that way. So I think last year we were about 92%, which is fairly standard in most of the Midwest. It's a little lower down in the Southeast in the US and maybe a tick higher out west.
Excelente. Muchas gracias, Jenny. Y esto es para los Hodgen, también esta pregunta. En el ganado, ¿cómo los proporcionan? ¿Si los dan mezclados con otros ingredientes o solos? ¿Cómo lo manejan ustedes?
For the cows, they're mainly on grass. We will in winter supplement their feed in a bunk. We can take corn stalks. And we bale up the husk and the leaf after we shell the corn, and then we will feed DDGs to them with a little bit of the grain fines in a bunk. On our cattle that we're finishing out for slaughter, they're on a bunk feeder that they can go up anytime they want. They're on a self feeder.
Muy interesante, qué interesante. No sé si quieren profundizar o ya. David, ¿tienes algo que quisieras agregar con eso?
Well, the dairy cows have what they call a TMR, mix the distillers grains, high quality alfalfa and corn silage. It's a candy mix, I call it, for the cows, and it's pretty much we have a consultant that works with us and gives us a recipe, if you will, to what part of ingredients we use. Now, having said that, the turkeys, that is dry because of feed storage and things like that. The cows get what he called a modified, which has is probably about 60-70% moisture, but it keeps it's fed rather quickly.
Muy bien, muy bien.
Javier, one of the nice things about DDGs from a livestock perspective, a ruminant like cows, is that you can take DDGs with a very low quality forage, mix them together, make a nice feed stuff for cattle, because it can really bring a lot of things that a low quality forage is lacking, make a nice balanced ration for cattle.
And you know, you're making a very interesting point. Quiero pedirle al doctor Rubén Aguilera que nos platique cómo usan los DDGs ahí en el sureste. Doctor, no sé si te puedas quitar en mute y te puedas mostrar para que les platiques a ellos también para que conozcan cómo están haciendo las cosas en el sureste y a lo mejor los Hodgen pueden aportar algo, ¿verdad? ¿Puedes comentar, Rubén? ¿Te puedes quitar de mute?
Sí, hola, buenas tardes. Básicamente hay dos formas de utilizarlo. Básicamente son secos y en el ganado en crecimiento ya algunos productores utilizan 1 kilogramo de DDG para darlo al ganado bajo condiciones de pastoreo. Y bajo estas circunstancias están obteniendo alrededor de 1 kilogramo de incremento de peso diario. En el caso de las vacas, que son vacas de escasa producción de leche, ese mismo kilo, un par de kilos, hacen que haya una producción mayor de leche y puedan pasar de 4 o 5 kilos a 8 o 9 kilos de leche diarias. Así es más o menos como lo están haciendo acá en el sureste de México.
No sé si les quieras también platicar sobre la cuestión, Rubén, del ganado de doble propósito.
Ok, sí, en el ganado de doble propósito, pues obviamente también va a usarse mezclado con otros insumos, de tal manera que podamos tener fórmulas de un costo menor, porque los precios de la leche siempre son o han sido muy bajos. Entonces el productor de leche quiere alimentos que sean económicamente unidades de producción, y generalmente podemos usar hasta un 50% de DDGs en las vacas, en los concentrados para esas vacas, y además nos ayuda a reducir los costos del alimento.
Muy bien. ¿Puedes explicarles qué es qué viene siendo el ganado de doble propósito?
El ganado de doble propósito es ganado cruzado, cruzas de ganado especializado con ganado cebuino o con ganado de cruzas indefinidas. Generalmente se usa Holstein, suizo o Simmental con ganado cebú, y ese es el de doble propósito. Básicamente los productores que están haciendo las cosas muy bien utilizan genotipos 5 octavos de la raza productora de leche, que puede ser Holstein o suizo pardo, con 3/4 de diferentes tipos de cebú.
Excelente.
Esas cruzas permiten tener producciones más aceptables y bueno, más resistencia.
Eso les va a ser muy interesante, ¿verdad? No sé, los Hodgen, si tienen alguna pregunta que quieran hacerle a Rubén sobre las prácticas y manejos y especies que se manejan en el sureste. Paul, no te escuchamos.
Oh, sorry, we were on mute there. I don't. Do you have any, Jenny?
Ok. Eduardo, ¿tú querías comentar algo, Eduardo Christensen? A ver, veo una que
Javier,
nada más
no,
levanta la mano. A ver, dime.
Yo tengo una pregunta.
Sí.
Ellos, los coaching, dicen que no le dan DDG al ganado más que en la finalización. Yo quisiera saber si en Estados Unidos es muy común dar los DDG puros o siempre los dan mezclados, y en el caso de darlos puros, ¿cuál sería la recomendación de máxima cantidad para vacas lecheras o para cerros en pastoreo? Aquí en el sureste hemos hecho muchas pruebas dando DDG puros sin mezclarlos. Quisiera saber si ellos también lo hacen.
You want to answer? Yeah, so for us, we do feed our pregnant cows DDG in the wintertime, mixed with the grain stuff and some low quality forage, because we can get the low quality forage cheaper and then use the DDGs to make a cheap ration for them that meets a dry cow's capacity. And then for the finishing stage, yes, we feed mainly DDGs there. That is our biggest use of it, but we do feed our cows DDGs in the wintertime.
Yeah. Now, out west, they have looked at just using, and I think the work was done by the University of Nebraska,
Yep.
looked at just feeding straight DDGs to cattle on feed, grass cattle. And inclusion rate has to be lower when they do that, and they have to, especially those DDGs out there, they have to pay attention to the sulfur level. But that ends up being the self-limiting factor. So they just need to pay attention to the sulfur level, and then most of them feed, and then they can feed their cow-calf pairs or their pregnant cows just at the level that is appropriate there. Now, I think somebody else is going to have to answer the dairy question, though.
Come on, David, it's your turn then.
Jump in, Dave.
The distiller's grains have to be mixed with other feeds for dairy cattle. I'm sorry.
A ver, Eduardo, te pusiste en mute. Estás en mute.
¿Ya me escuchan?
Sí.
Hemos hecho algunas pruebas con becerras jóvenes en crecimiento y hemos observado que los DDGs tienen muy buena efecto en la fertilidad del ganado. Esas becerras entraron en celo y parieron un año antes de lo que normalmente paren en el sureste. En vez de parir a los 3 o 4 años, parieron a los 2 años con los DDGs. O sea, la fertilidad es muy importante en ellos.
¿Qué opinas de eso, David? ¿Estás de acuerdo con eso? ¿Qué es lo que has visto con las vacas lecheras?
I think that the results here in the U.S. show similar things. I don't know that anybody's probably pushed them that quickly, but they do see similar results here from some of the research I've seen. We haven't tried it. We've pretty much stuck with our same system because we need cattle to calve when we're not in the field. So that's how we make our decisions.
Okay. Okay. Any last comments, David? Do you have anything that you want to add? ¿Tienes algún otro comentario que quieras hacer, David?
No, not really. Just hope we have a great crop year.
Ok, excelente. Quiero también aprovechar, no sabía que nos iba a acompañar, pero tenemos a la directora de, ¿cómo se llama? De Indiana, de los productores de maíz de Indiana, Courtney Kingery. Quiero aprovechar para darle la bienvenida y agradecerles que nos está acompañando aquí. Es es una agradable sorpresa contar con ella aquí con nosotros. Connie, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. No sé si tengas algunas palabras que quieras hacer para nuestros consumidores de DDGs del sureste de México.
Javier, thank you. Buenas noches to all of our friends on the phone. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for joining us in our state. We always love to host our colleagues and our partners from Mexico. We wish you could be here with us in person and touring and seeing the fields and maybe having a lovely meal together. We hope this is a good compromise given everything. And we appreciate you joining us. We have some great farmers on the phone, running some of the best of Indiana corn and agriculture with Tim and the Hodgen family and David and Kelly. You really are lucky to be meeting with some of the best farmers in Indiana. So this is a really powerful group of farmers for you to be meeting with. And as I've been listening this evening, you know, I heard the current state of the crops and the corn crops and how they are different across the state and at different areas, but all still very high quality and a high quality and high yield and really just nice grain for it. We also heard from some of our ethanol partners in the state and how they are able to bring that high quality corn that's grown mostly here in Indiana and transform that into ethanol and then also into DDGs and some of the products. And you're also very lucky that so many of the corn farmers in Indiana are diversified and they also raise dairy, raise cattle, raise poultry. So you've been able to really hear the impact and the interdependency between the corn that's grown, the corn that gets processed, the DDGs that come back, and how it all works together. And the partnership as well with our pork and our pork producers and the poultry side, and how within Indiana that close connection between row crops, our livestock partners, our ethanol producers, and how it works really closely together. And so with this group of really superstar farmers that you've been able to visit with this weekend or this evening, I hope that you've been able to get a flavor for what makes Indiana agriculture so special and why I am so honored and so proud working with not only great farmers, staff, and the folks like Elena and Ed and Robin from staff as well. So thank you again for joining us. I wish again we were having a wonderful meal right now, but soon we'll be able to see everybody face to face and have a wonderful meal together and talk in person. Thank you.
Okay. Tengo otra pregunta que se me hace muy interesante y siempre sale esta pregunta ya casi al final. Tengo a alguien, ¿cómo se llama? Arturo Castellanos, y él está preguntando sobre que el maíz que cultivan, en el caso de los Hodgen, va para la planta de etanol. Además de que pues él supone que lo que están vendiendo es grado número 2, ¿qué término de calidad es lo que les piden en el maíz en las plantas de etanol? No sé si alguien nos pueda contestar eso, ya sea los Hodgen o David o incluso Courtney.
Yeah, so most of our corn is either 1 or 2 that gets delivered to the ethanol plant. And our test weights will vary depending on the hybrid from 56 to 58, 59 pounds per bushel. But we do deliver a 1 or 2.
¿Qué hay de los grados? Además del número, ¿están checando algunas otras cosas como material extraño, como las micotoxinas? Micotoxinas, ¿qué más?
Yeah, mycotoxins really are not a problem most years for us. 2012 was last year when we had a really bad drought. Our climate, we don't have to worry about aflatoxin. Most of our diplodia is very low this year. As far as any other ear rots or anything like that, we really haven't had a bad outbreak anywhere here in the state for any ear gibberella or aflatoxin, anything like that.
And talk about how they test so that you know.
So they do test loads going into the ethanol plant as harvest is progressing to make sure that there is no problem from the crop coming in. And if they do start suspecting it, they do test for the aflatoxin because they don't want to get concentrated in the DDGs. So they are very prudent about testing the corn as it's coming into the ethanol plant.
Javier, whenever I am at your grain rollout and making speeches, always concern was quality. They were very concerned, and my expression to them was always, we try to dry our grain to the point where we don't get a lot of cracks and things like that. Most of our corn, it goes to an ADM terminal on the Ohio River and it's exported, hopefully down to you guys. But we try to keep a high quality. You know, our corn is, we do the variable rate all the way through, just like Paul was explaining, grid sampling, yield maps on our combine, and replace nutrients according to yield so we don't have excessive runoff into the streams, things like that. Most corn farmers in Indiana are very observant about the quality of their grains, and I think more so going into ethanol plants even than export.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias. No sé si alguien de nuestros anfitriones quiera opinar más acerca de esto. Ed, ¿tienes algo que agregar?
Yeah, I think earlier there was a question regarding, what current ethanol margins look like and kind of what that outlook is for, going forward as we emerge from the COVID issue. I think right now, if you look at regular margins, if you look at just variable costs, which are basically the cost of the corn, the DDG value, the cost of natural gas, and some of the variable plant costs in terms of electricity, etc. Right now, if you look at an Iowa ethanol plant, right now they're about 36 cents per gallon, or about $1.05 per bushel positive. However, when you add fixed costs and other issues in terms of capital depreciation and others, in Iowa, you're about 11 cents per bushel negative after you add in the fixed cost layer. So looking at an Indiana plant, for example, similar in terms of that same kind of margin structure of variable costs, you're covering them with a gross profit. However, when you go to the total cost line, Indiana plants right now are about 5 or 6 cents per bushel, below their total cost. So this is much better, however, than it has been recently. Obviously, during the height of the COVID issue, it was very negative, and which led to many of our plants sharply reducing their grind, or even in many cases just idling the plant, waiting for the ethanol margin to improve, and also the demand to improve as we started demanding more gasoline as we emerged from COVID.
Es muy interesante la observación y bueno, eso hace que me nazca una pregunta. Yo como un comprador de DDG en el sureste de México, ¿qué es lo que debería estar observando? ¿El precio del maíz o el costo del barril del petróleo?
Both.
Okay.
You need to watch both of those because gasoline at the low, did we ever get below $1 a gallon, Elena? I think we did.
Yeah, we had 98 cents was the low for Indiana.
Right, and at that point in time, ethanol price was extraordinarily low, and DDGs were conversely very high because everyone still had them in their feed rations, and suddenly the supply just goes to zero. So it was kind of upside down, right? It did what you wouldn't have thought that it would have done. But if you're looking at prices and certainly wanting to lock in values that are competitive for you and your programs, you have to watch both ethanol value and what that grind economics looks like, and then you also have to watch what's going on in both the petroleum market on two sides. Number one, the value of crude is important, but number two, what does the demand picture for crude look like? Because as we continue to reopen our country and demand keeps growing in terms of liquid fuel, gasoline for cars, that obviously puts pressure on the amount of DDGs that are available. And actually, again, conversely, it makes DDGs more competitive in terms of price as you continue to increase that grind. So it's counterintuitive and it's kind of a backward contango position, but it makes sense when you start thinking about it. More grind means lower value for DDGs in general terms.
Muy bien, muy bien. Me acaba de llegar otra pregunta de parte de Jesús Gil, y aquí para hacer esta pregunta necesito el apoyo del doctor Rubén Aguilera en la cuestión técnica, porque sí está haciendo una pregunta técnica para los Hodgen, ¿okay? En específico. Él está en el sureste y él hay ganado semiestabulado. Entonces él dice que ha tenido experiencia con los DDGs que le crean problemas digestivos, zorreras, dice Rubén, si lo puedes traducir al español para que lo puedan traducir al inglés, y desperdiciando mucho DDG. ¿Qué es lo que sugiere? No sé si lo quieres aclarar más tú, Rubén.
Sí, con gusto. Bueno, habría que ver la situación específica, ¿no? Qué cantidad está dando y bajo qué circunstancias. Generalmente proporcionando 1 kilo a los becerros en pastoreo no hay ningún problema. No hemos observado ninguno, pero lo podemos ver directamente para apoyarle y solucionar ese problema, ¿no?
Ok, pero digo, esto es interesante, ahí te ganó el ego tantito, porque la pregunta es para los Hodgen, entonces ayuda a los ayuda a los traductores para que puedan hacer la pregunta, ¿a qué se refiere con zorrera? ¿Y qué sugerencia tienen los Hodgen?
Debe ser
tu aportación, ¿verdad? Pero que vamos a ver qué es lo que dicen ellos también.
Ok.
Pero no te escondas, Rubén. No es para tanto.
Ok.
Pero ¿cómo pones esa pregunta para que el traductor se la pueda hacer a los Hodgen?
Sí, problemas digestivos son significativos de diarreas. Diarrea.
Entonces, para los Hodgen, ¿qué sugerencia tienen ustedes para Jesús Gil?
So
I think there's a couple of things. So it may be the feedstuffs, but there may be some underlying health issues too that have to be addressed too. So it kind of goes back to Ruben's comment. It's going to be a case-by-case thing, be caused by multiple things. So feedstuffs could be one, but they're all parasite control. So what is that under control? So, you know, unless we're there, it's hard to make a definite but that's kind of how we would work through it. If one of our calves has scours, okay, is its nutrition right? Is its health protocol, and you know, check the temperature and do all of your health checks on it, and then obviously check for parasite loads. And as you're checking the boxes on each one of those, hopefully we would figure out what is causing the problem on that. So hopefully we don't spread it to the rest of the herd, and hopefully we can get that little guy back to where he's supposed to be.
Ok, entonces, doctora Jenny Hodgen, avalas entonces al doctor Rubén, me da mucho gusto, entonces que sí está dando buenas respuestas, sí está dando buenas asesorías.
Yeah.
Ok, muy bien. No sé si exista alguna otra pregunta que quieran hacer, y me da mucho gusto que se haya abierto esto. Digo, es comprensible porque tenemos una barra del idioma, y puede ser algo de intimidante, pero conforme hemos ido tomando confianza, se ha logrado librar esa barra, y ha sido muy bueno, y es muy buena experiencia. Estamos todavía en cuestiones nuevas, ¿verdad? Es la primera vez que usamos el modo de traducción en un grupo tan grande, y es nada más cuestión de olvidarte que está ahí y hacer las preguntas y hablar tu idioma y ya. Pero no sé si no hay alguna otra pregunta. Primero que nada, quiero agradecer a los productores de maíz del estado de Indiana por tenernos, por habernos recibido, ¿verdad? Quiero agradecer también a los productores del sureste de México, ¿verdad? Que una cosa que es muy bonito es que, y David Ring le ha tocado ver, y me ha tocado que vea que son las mismas gentes, son las mismas formas de pensar, y lo vemos en las respuestas que dan los Hodgen y Rubén Aguilera, son las mismas formas de ver el campo, y eso es muy bonito, porque son el puente que tenemos, es que a final de cuentas somos el mismo tipo de persona, y así como ustedes muy amablemente nos invitan a Indiana, esperemos que pronto nos puedan visitar allá en el sureste. Les digo que ahí en el sureste hay muchas cosas también muy emocionantes para conocer, y en el norte también, y en el centro, y en todos lados, ¿verdad? Pero nos va a dar mucho gusto tenerlos por aquí, y les doy las gracias por estar, por haber estado aquí con nosotros. Espero que haya salido bien para ustedes también. Yo me voy muy contento. Muchas gracias. No sé si alguien quiera comentar de los de Indiana. Morning. Ed?
I think Eduardo had a comment.
Eduardo, ¿tienes algún comentario que quieras hacer?
Sí. ¿Puedo hacer una última pregunta?
Sí, puedes hacer una última pregunta.
Bueno, desde que comenzamos hace muchos años a trabajar con los DDGs, la primera pregunta que a mí me hicieron, y que realmente todavía no está muy clara, es ¿por qué se triplica la concentración de proteína del maíz al DDG? Hablamos de que el almidón ocupa 2/3 del maíz, y el DDG es el tercio que queda, pero mucha gente me dice, no te creo. Yo quisiera ver si alguno de ellos nos puede dar una explicación más clara y más precisa de esa razón. ¿Por qué si el maíz tiene 10% de proteína, el DDG de ese maíz tiene 30%? Es una cosa que aún no podemos explicar muy claramente.
It has to do with the fermenting process, that the starch in the corn kernel is what is converted to alcohol and is taken out, and the protein and the endosperm is what's left. The oil and the protein part of the kernel is what's left, and that ratio in what starch to everything else in the kernel is 1/3 to 2/3, and that's how you get the concentrate.
So another way to think of it is a
Así
pie.
es lo que decimos, ¿no?
A ver, Ed, ¿ibas a explicar, Ed?
Yeah, another way to think about it is think of it as a pie, and then if you remove 2/3 of the pie, then the 1/3 becomes the full pie. So again, it just becomes, that's why when Paul was talking earlier about mycotoxins, as you remove the starch to generate sugars and then eventually the ethanol or the alcohol, that's why what's left is concentrated, and the mycotoxins, or in this case, the protein stays in what's left, and that's what that concentration is. You know, as you take the other 2/3 of the pie away, there's only that left. So that's why you get this this concentrating effect in terms of the increase in protein and the increase in oil content if you're not taking the oil off as part of your grinding process.
Claro.
Muy bien.
Entonces coincidimos con lo que estamos diciendo nosotros. Gracias.
Bueno, no sé si hay alguna otra pregunta también que quiera hacer alguien más. O comentarios por parte de nuestros anfitriones.
Well, one thing we were going to share with our group here, Javier, is kind of a video that shows what farmers do here in Indiana on the weekends to have fun. So
Okay.
this is what they do when they're not doing farming. They do other things, and this is part of what they do. So we're in Indiana, so it's the racing capital of the world. So
Disney
our
Plus,
farmers
Hulu, and
like to
ESPN
drive
Plus.
fast,
Now,
and they like fast cars.
bundled together, the greatest stories and characters, the largest.
So this was actually just it'll be 2 weeks this weekend, right, Elena?
Yes. So this is a race. These drivers run primarily off of E85 ethanol, and they go up to over 200 miles per hour, Javier. So this is part of my job, to go to racing events to encourage ethanol in motorsports and also at the gas station as well. But these cars can go into E85 at the gas station, and then they go run these races. Like I said, they're about half-mile drag race, and they go very fast. We're promoting here in the United States unleaded 88, which is E15, 15% ethanol. And then these cars also run on the E85. So we support these races that help. There's a car right there with our unleaded 88. And we've got different companies that work with us, like Octane TV, because ethanol is a very huge octane booster in the racing world. Actually, today, you're going to hear it in Mexico, probably in the next week or two. But I worked with Stefan Wittig from U.S. Grains Council today, and we did an interview with Mario Dominguez, former IndyCar driver. former IndyCar driver and with the owner of this race. So we're going to be excited to see that coming out soon. It's almost going here at the end.
There we go.
And that's the race.
Our technology ran away from us.
Yeah, so any questions for gas stations, Javier, or racing, you can direct them to me. Okay?
No, too much power ran away from us.
Yes.
Excelente. Y no queda duda, ¿verdad? Que el etanol es un combustible que es renovable, que viene del campo, ¿verdad? Y que es limpio, ¿verdad? Y vaya, no hay que pensarlo. Es una energía que es la energía del futuro. Si más no recuerdo, creo que los primeros carros que Henry Ford construyó usaban etanol de combustible, ¿verdad? Entonces, sí, es la energía del
What was alcohol?
Así es. Alcohol.
Back in those days, they drank that. It was called corn liquor. So he was using methanol.
Bueno, no se quedó ciego, ¿verdad?
Yeah, no blind, can see.
Okay.
Javier doesn't know about that ethanol or that alcohol business. I've been with him.
No.
I've been with him several times. He doesn't know about that.
No. Bueno, hemos probado cuando hemos ido a Sonora ahí el Bacanora, y yo creo que hay coches que pueden correr con él fácilmente con el Bacanora.
Yes.
That drink that we have over there in Sonora. Pero bueno, pues muchas gracias. Fue un placer. Gracias por el video que nos hicieron el favor de compartirnos. Muy interesante y muy interesante para nuestro mercado también que conozca, uno, de dónde vienen los DDGs y dos, cómo esto beneficia al campo, porque también es algo que pudiera estar beneficiando, así como beneficia a Estados Unidos y beneficia a Brasil, podría beneficiar el campo mexicano también.
Agreed.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias a todos. Les deseo que tengan una buena noche y gracias por acompañarnos aquí con nosotros entonces. Hasta luego. Gracias.
Look forward to seeing you, Javier.
See me too. Always.